One thing I've learned over the last few years is that the way I learn languages doesn't stay the same. What worked for me a year ago might not be the best approach today. And I've realized that changing my learning method isn't a sign that I failed. It's often a sign that I've changed as a learner or that I simply need something different right now. I also don't think there is one perfect language learning method. I think the best method at any given moment is the one that you actually use. Because even the perfect method won't help if you never open the book, the app, or the website. Over time, our goals change. Our available time changes. Sometimes our interests change. And sometimes we simply reach a point where a resource has already taught us what we needed from it. So instead of asking, what's the best language learning method, I now ask, what's the best method for me right now? I think that's a much more useful questioner because every language, every stage, every learner, and every situation is different. Spanish is probably my best example. When I first started learning Spanish, my learning looked very different from today. Then, last year, I decided to restart from the basics because I felt stuck. My goal wasn't to start over completely. It was to find the gaps in my learning and fill them. As I continued learning, reading slowly became one of my main ways to improve. Today, I spend much more time reading than I did before. In fact, I now spend more time reading than working with structured learning resources. That doesn't mean my old methods were bad. They got me to the point where reading became a useful next step. They had done their job. Japanese is almost the opposite. Because it's so different from the languages I already know, I still use much more structured learning materials. I spend more time working through lessons and specific exercises. I still immerse myself in Japanese, but I also accept that I won't understand very much. Sometimes I only recognize a few words. Sometimes I read parts of a text without understanding it. And sometimes I simply get used to seeing or hearing the language. For me, that's still valuable. Maybe in a few years, my Japanese learning will look completely different. Maybe reading will become my main activity there as well. Or maybe it won't. I will simply use the method that helps me most at that point. Now to how I know it's time to change my learning. For me, there isn't one single answer. Usually, it's one of these things. I notice that I'm no longer learning much from a resource, or my goals have changed, my available time has changed, or I find another method that fits my current situation better, or I realized that I'm only using a resource because I've always used it. None of these automatically mean I should stop, but they make me think about whether my current approach is still the best one for me. Even though my learning has changed a lot, some things are still staying the same. One example is Enki. It's been part of my language learning for years. Everything else has changed around it, but Enki has continued to fit into the way I learn. Looking back, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that changing your learning method isn't giving up. Sometimes it's exactly what helps you keep improving. Because we're not the same learner we were a year ago. Our goals change, our available time changes, our interests change. So why should we expect our learning method to stay exactly the same? For me, language learning isn't about finding one perfect method that I will use forever. It's about finding the method that fits me right now. And I think the best method at any given moment is the one that you actually use. When that changes, I'm okay with changing my learning too. So now I'm curious. Have you ever changed the way you learn a language? What made you realize it was time for something different? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments.